got 2 minutes.
Oh. You're just testing us. We're
Checking to see if you guys
No,
were
it's
live.
good. It's good.
See if you were live or if you were on Zoom.
You guys at that meeting the other day was just. Oh my gosh.
Cal's playing the monkey's greatest hits. How do you do?
Be careful, I might start singing with you.
Did you see that crash?
We took the TV monitor away altogether, sorry.
I know what the sign said. I was
Wondering if we shouldn't replace it.
translated.
Because we'll have it better for Zoom, but maybe it's not better for the rest of console.
Well, that was
Well, no doubt.
that was a work safety issue.
Yeah.
This is safer over here.
Well, we're getting it on if we have to.
A little tiny one.
Sometimes.
How's that to call? That's war.
Yeah. Well, did you see the one we're talking about?
No.
Woman in German
Thank you.
jumped in front of the peloton with like this massive sign trying to get on camera
Oh yeah.
and just
Oh, right. Mike,
wiped the
yeah, Mike said that he saw that clip. Yeah.
Remember that guy used to have John 13 or something at the football games? All that?
Yeah,
How the hell did he get into all those games? Every time field goal, whoop, John 13.
yeah.
All right, you've lift off. Okay. Okay, folks, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Thanks everybody for being here. And I just wanted to make a little bit of a public announcement here. Our fire chief is quite concerned that maybe people will be using fireworks over July 1st, and we're asking the community to refrain from using any fireworks. We have a high fire possibility in and around our community. So just a word of warning, now that we're coming out of COVID, it just seems like a great time to celebrate, but let's leave the fireworks for one more year. Okay, thank you. And with that, I'd like to start with the Aboriginal Acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge the lands to which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Tanaha, the Silix, and the Sinix peoples, and is home to Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honour their connection to the land, rivers, and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. I don't believe we have any late items, and I'd like a motion, therefore, to adopt the agenda, please. Councillor Woodward and Councillor Charleswood. Second. All in favour? Carried. Thanks very much. Motion to adopt the minutes from the previous meeting of May the 25th, 2020. Councillor Morrison, Councillor Renwick. All in favour? Carried. Thanks very much. Public participation, I don't believe there is any, Sarah. Presentations, and the first presentation is from the Regional District of Central Kootenay on the Resource Recovery Plan. And hopefully we have, I believe Amy's going to be showing up for sure. I'm not sure who else is coming with her. There's Amy right there. And Uli. And anybody else? Just the two of them?
Can they hear us?
They can hear us now.
We're just waiting for you.
We can hear you now.
Well, we hear you, Uli, but we can't see you. But you have a face for radio. Oh, you're on anyway. Good.
Hi, Uli.
Welcome. And there's Amy. Welcome.
But
Hi.
Okay.
Amy will be
Okay.
presented.
Are you able to hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Great. So I will just double check. I understand a video link was sent. I have it prepared and ready to go, and I can share the screen and we can watch it together and go into questions. Or if you have watched it already, we can just launch right into questions.
Margie is
If there's anybody else on the call that's not on mute, please mute it.
Margie Lasker.
A little bit of feedback from somebody. Oh, there it goes. All right, I think we're okay now, Amy.
Okay, so would you like me to go ahead and share the video then?
Certainly.
Okay.
Sounds like we're watching it again.
All right, I'll get it up here.
Everybody see this? Watch this video?
I watched it, yeah.
So she asked her when the sound was broken up, whether or not we needed to see it again, or if we just wanted to ask questions, or, so at this point,
I think we
we're showing
should-
it for public.
Yeah, for the public.
Oh, I see. Yeah, fair enough.
Okay, so okay to proceed?
Yeah, absolutely, Amy, yeah.
No sound, although.
She hasn't played it yet.
Do we have to hit the sound here? No, she does it there. We're not getting the sound, Amy.
Okay, just a second.
Was this a YouTube?
It was when yeah.
Can we just share the YouTube link?
So you're not able to hear the sound?
No.
Oh, it looks like your speaker is on, it looks like.
I think the WebEx had something to do with.
Can we just share the link with
Yeah,
the
I'll-
public later?
Yeah, you have to set the
Yeah,
internal
absolutely.
sound as an audio source.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to yield to Keith here because he might actually know what he's talking about. Keith, what did you say?
There's an option definitely in the audio settings to play the internal sound of the computer as opposed to the microphone,
Did you hear
Okay, so
which I think is near where your microphone input is.
Playing the video for the public's benefit?
Yeah.
Why don't we just share the YouTube link with them?
I could also send the link and you guys can play it from your video system.
Can we just
not
go to
do it.
questions?
Maybe what we can do is post the link as a comment on the YouTube stream after.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm fine with it.
Amy, I think what the suggestion here
That
from
works
council is, if it's okay with you, we could post the link after for the public.
Absolutely.
Would that be all right?
Yeah, it's on our YouTube channel, so it's easy to share.
Okay.
We
All
will
right.
do that.
Okay.
So with that, you still have the floor. So if you wanted to, give a preamble into the conversation, now's your chance.
Sure, I'll just intro with the consultation period that we've been going through for the month of June is nearing completion. We had, I think, over 1,300 survey respondents, which was quite spectacular, actually. And we'll be summarizing the information from the survey, any comments and questions we arise out of the municipal meetings. You guys are one of the last ones we're hosting or participating in, sorry. And then what we've also sent letters to all the major stakeholders and to First Nations, and the consultation summary will go to the joint committee in July, along with any recommendations for modifications to the plan. We'll take the feedback of that to and then revise the plan, and then the plan is to hopefully bring it back in August for the final plan for consideration by the board. Once approved, we will send to the province. And so, as described in the video, there's a number of actions that we are pursuing, a lot of zero waste actions, and some of our residual and finance. Those are the three main focuses of the plan. And I think the plan itself is pretty hearty, but the videos definitely help to summarize some of the details, and then the finer details can be found in the plan. So I think whatever is of interest and concern to the city of Nelson is what we're here to respond to tonight.
Thanks, Amy. Uli, had you anything you wanted to add?
No, not really, because we are really focusing on the questions.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll open the floor to council, starting with Councillor Lachtenberg.
Thanks, Mayor. Amy and Uli, thanks for sharing this presentation with us. One thing that, and pardon me if I missed it somehow, I seem to miss it a lot lately, is landfill gas capture. Can you explain again to us why that's, or how you ruled out landfill gas capture? And I think it was all about economies of scale, and yet it when I've done a little bit more research on this, it did seem that there are similar sizes. I know Squamish, the city of Squamish, is pretty proud of their landfill gas capture. Why is it not included here? Why have we not considered it?
Maybe if you're okay, I answer that one.
Yeah.
So we have not ruled out landfill gas capture. So we in fact capture landfill gas already for several years at the Creston landfill. What we have temporarily, I don't know if you want to call it ruled out, but we have looked, really Fortis has looked to some degree at the feasibility of connecting the Utashinia landfill to their gas distribution system. And they were the one at the time to tell me that wasn't a feasible project.
Uli, you're struggling there
Support,
you're struggling for bandwidth there, my
gas
friend.
projects that were from
That was an unfortunate pause.
You're gonna have to turn off your
Oh,
video 'cause we're
okay.
losing the volumes.
Yeah, you might have to turn off the video.
be okay, but okay, I'll do that. Okay. So we have not ruled out landfill gas development at the Utashinia landfill. At the time, a few years back, when we looked together with Fortis at that project, Fortis was the one saying that at that point, a project of connecting the landfill to their natural gas distribution system was not a feasible project. We will continue to look at that. One of the hurdles that we have at Tashania is that we are not at a stage and elevation where we can put liners on and capping the landfill. And that's typically the point where it is most feasible to get to landfill gas extraction. And that has a couple of reasons. The cover itself contains the gas, and it is much more easily forced into collection system. B, if you develop landfill gas wells, as we call it, in a landfill that is still wide open, and you still continue to put waste into it, you always have to work around your landfill gas wells. So it's a very difficult operation. Very often you damage the wells in the process. And that's the two main factors why we are right now not yet looking at landfill gas capture. But I'm convinced that Utashinia, it's just a question of time until we are getting into landfill gas capture.
Okay,
Yeah,
supplemental.
absolutely. Yeah.
So Uli, if it's still on the table, and let's say it's a 10 or 15 year time frame, does that factor in to the question of organics diversion today? Like how would that impact our organics diversion program today, knowing that that's coming? Is there any consideration for what's that going to do to impact the long-term viability of the program?
the captured landfill gas amounts will certainly be reduced from the current scenario where all organics going into the landfill. But a waste that is placed or organic waste that is placed now will produce landfill gas for 15, 20 years. It goes extremely down over the years, so the highest amounts are being collected in the first couple of years of placement of the waste, but there will be ongoingly gas produced and can be captured, number one. Number two, even if we extract the food waste and good portions of other organic waste like yard waste, there will be still significant amounts of organics going into the landfill from construction demolition waste, plastics, all of these materials that have a much slower degradation that will continue to produce landfill gas in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Nicole?
Thanks for the presentation. I have a question around the financing, wondering why, or maybe it's not a why, but I'm noting that there's going to be increases in operating costs towards the end of the 10-year period, and that it's noted that revenues would have to increase at the same time, and I'm curious why there wouldn't be increases in fees more gradually rather than having them stay low and then hitting with big increases at the end of the term. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the plan is not our approved financial plan that goes to the board annually. So what the plan did is identify what the cost increases will be, and it will be up to the board to determine how to fund those, and whether or not that will be done through tipping fees or taxation, and whether or not some of those costs are incurred due to the borrowing costs for larger capital projects. So we could look at doing increases to revenues now that could reduce the borrowing costs later. One of the things that some of the significant costs near the end period as well are the landfill closures, and those are very conceptual costs at this point, because we don't have the assessment and closure plans in place for those historical landfills. So right now, each landfill, there's 10 of them across the district. They've all been allocated $1 million in closure costs based on some preliminary cost assessments at other sites right now. But it's obviously, some of them might be much less and some might be much more. And so determining exactly how to fund those at 5 years, and this is not the approved financial plan that we go through. It is just a guide for what we can suspect to see in the future.
Thanks, Amy.
Councillor Page.
Thanks. I have a question here, and I'm not sure if this is where it lands when we talk about resource recovery, but it's specifically around how we're monitoring what is going on with septic with the lake. So if this is not a time and place, but if it is with central waste, how are we moving forward on a conversation on what the monitoring looks like for sewage going into the lake and coming up with mitigation strategies for that?
I think we'll leave that one for now, if you don't mind. But make a note of it and we'll follow up.
Yeah, and I did follow up.
You
I
did?
believe I shared that with
So
Councillor Page, but
is it connected to?
I'd like to see it too. Did you share it?
It's
it
connected
wasn't a
to.
show, it was just a response.
So what do you want to do? So
Well, they don't, so Uli and Amy, you guys we don't do septic management, there isn't anything in the plan. I did ask CAO Horn, and he said that there is no official plan about monitoring septic or flying drones. We don't own a drone, we don't fly a drone over the lake to look for people that are disposing directly of their sewage into the lake. And I believe it's been discussed before. Uli, you've been around for a long time, maybe you can just comment on that briefly.
Sure.
Saying is there is no plan.
Sure, yeah. So there was over several, no, I would say over 15 years, there was considerations given for managing the wastewater sources along the West Arm. There was a study done, I want to say, going back 13 years. It had identified the potential for piping all sewer from the north side of, so more or less the North Shore area, and I believe down to the Tagam area, and potentially pipe it to a larger or a couple of larger wastewater facilities. That study, like I said, was associated with a high cost. It was put aside and not further followed up. We had a wastewater management plan on the books for many years. There was never a significant interest to pursue it. So in the end, the only element that has been or was left is here in the resource recovery plan, and that's what we call the septic strategy. So more or less, the ability to properly manage the septic materials coming out of the individual homes. That is actually, for me personally, quite of urgency, because I don't feel that our current facilities are adequate to handle them in an environmentally responsible way. So we are hoping that we can work with municipalities, at least ideally with municipalities, to dispose of our septic waste, simply because the larger municipalities in the area have already technology that can responsibly treat and dispose of these wastewater materials.
Thank you, Uli. Is that okay, Councillor Page?
Get this conversation started, yeah.
Can I just just clarify, because I think I asked this at the Resource Recovery Committee. So that's a cost recovery service. That's not part of taxation here, because clearly this is solid waste, not liquid waste. That's correct?
Currently, it is embedded. If I will personally, or as staff, we are pushing to have this separated out of it. We have that already, that structure in place in the West Subregion. And particularly if we partner with other organizations for septic treatment, I think that is the only and right way to go, to have this fully based on a user fee basis. We are going that direction in Creston and area. We have, like I said, that structure in the West Subregion already in place, and I think that's the right way to approach it in the Central Subregion.
And then maybe along the same lines, I know it's not necessarily directly in the resource recovery plan, but the RD has still committed to looking at recycling. Is it recycling, and I forget what the other one that council has asked that be separated out as well.
That is correct. Our CAO brought a report to the last board meeting, and it was decided that we separate out 5 services in total. Amy, help me out. I believe it was 3 recycling services, or was it 2 recycling and?
I believe it was 3 recycling services, 1 for each subregion, a compost organics for the east, and then a shared compost organics for the west and central.
That's correct.
They'll be broken out as allocation services, I think, with the intent for the 2022 budget season.
Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Councillor Renwick?
Thank you.
You might have to sit a little closer to the mic, if you don't mind. Yeah, please.
Sorry, I'm used to not used to this.
I know we're not
Sorry.
used to it, but years since we used that thing.
Amy, Uli, thank you. I read the report and watched the YouTube with great interest, and excuse me, but I still refer to this as, you know, garbage and composting and recycling. That's just me. But I guess I'm curious as to, in the report, you did mention some educational component, which I feel is very important. I'm just going to share with you, if you don't mind, why. When I first sat at this table a year and a half ago, or whenever it was, I mean, it seems like longer than that.
It is.
Oh, it is longer.
Add a
year.
Well, you were asleep for the first year. So.
You know, I wasn't a composting guy. Everything went in the garbage, and it went to I live at Queens Bay, so it went to the Balfour transfer station. I was part of the food cycler pilot program. That was a real eye-opener. And of course, you guys have done, I think, a great job in, you know, when you switched over to GFL or whoever collects now. I was 3 bags of garbage a month to the transfer station up there. I'm now not quite 1, and everything else goes into the food cycler or into composting. And it just makes sense to me that is that not where the crux of this should be aimed at, is a very, very strong educational part for those folks that were ignorant like myself.
Yes, the one of the main focuses of the plan is our zero waste initiatives, and education is a component of that. The intent is to see where we can get further diversion and truly where we can get that messaging. So is that communications with the public at public events, through stakeholders or major producers. And so the plan allocates, I think, 10,000 annually district-wide for education to expand upon what we're currently doing and really get out and engage. The diversion is one of the biggest key initiatives of the plan, and where we can really, that's truly where we want to have a lot of our efforts. Some of the diversion is levels of government higher than us, and that is we're lobbying the province and Recycle BC, for example, to increase materials that can go into that program, or increase the cost incentives, because the depot programs are not as well funded as the curbside programs. And so that is certainly one of our main focuses for the plan period.
Yeah, Amy, I noticed that piece in the presentation, and I actually thought, considering the budget's going to be around 12 million at one point, the 10,000 seemed like a pretty tiny amount to allocate to try and get people to change their habits and potentially claw back that budget, which in my opinion is just over the top. Uli and I have had these conversations over the years, and one of the last ones we had, Uli, was probably 8 years ago, about the sooner we get away from the Samo landfill, the better, because we were spending more money on consultants to tell us that we needed to move out of there. And part of the challenge I have with this program is that you're actually going back there to deliver that, which is contrary to the greenhouse gas reductions that you're trying to achieve through the program. There's a number, in my opinion, a number of really serious flaws in this program, none the least of which is in the information you sent out, which had absolutely no budget attached to it. And I thought that was a missing piece. And believe it or not, my wife picked it up, and that was the first thing she picked up on was, okay, where are the numbers here? And if I were expected to respond to this document, and that may be a reflection of what I'm talking about around the 10,000 allocation for publicity. I know it's not your responsibility, but I would have thought there'd be a budget in it, because when I looked at the YouTube piece, it's pretty clear that we're on a path of some serious cost increase here, and they were referenced as borrowing, and borrowing, in my opinion, has to be paid somewhere, and it's either paid by user fees or, in this case, taxation. And the other missing piece in that was that it was basically put on the shoulders of the municipalities to do the diversion, and rural residents were under no obligation to participate in the program. In fact, in the YouTube video, they danced around it quite nicely in suggesting it should happen, but without sort of laying it out in any clear terms. And I have a long list here, and we will eventually get it to you. But last but not least is on the 28th of, in 2019, on April the 23rd, we had a presentation here from the same lady that's put this together with the, I think it was a $1.2 million project that was going to be offset somewhat by a $400,000 grant that we had to panic to get, that's now over almost 2.5 million in, what is it, 1921, 2 years, according to the YouTube video. And I mean, it seems to me like we have a system that's out of control here, and the central one in particular, when you look at the graphs on the region, is off the charts. And that future cost of closure of these landfills, the reason I'm talking about this, Uli and Amy, is because we are a major contributor financially to this program and to all of that central waste. You and I have had these conversations, Uli, over the years, and you know as well as I do that I would say that you're probably searching for why are we going back to Salmo? It does not reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We spent years working with West Waste to come up with an agreement to go to Otoshinya, and I can't find any documentation that shows me that that's still not the right choice for a recycling or a composting facility. Well, we have trucks going there every day, and now we've got a separate fleet of trucks burning gasoline or diesel going to Salmo on a regular basis. Plus, based on what's on this YouTube presentation, you do not have the volumes to make that work. If we go to the food sector, which I'm sure we will, and you don't have the industrials, and you have no commitment from your regional district partners to participate, you do not have the volumes to make this site work.
Is there a question?
There is a question, yeah. How do you justify what you've put out to the public without a budget attached to it and a YouTube video on the last day when people can participate in the mail-in or website program that you put out? And back to Rick's question, you've got allocated $10,000 in a multi-million-dollar operation to public engagement. I find this program has been poorly thought out, it's short-sighted, and it does not address the concerns of the major players in the program, which is, one of them is right here. And our taxpayers will pay the bulk of this bill with little of the service. And none of our regional partners are under any obligation to engage or participate. Those questions need to be addressed, and they need to be addressed before you go forward with this, what I see as a poorly thought out program. And I see no justification for pushing it forward at this point in time, and no justification for going back to the Salmo landfill that we talked about. And it's documented at the regional district that we should get away from it ASAP. And I was at the table.
So if you're ready for a response to a few of those items, I can start. So the Salmo landfill is closed, and we have no intents of doing any more landfilling. The cover is placed, the landfill's been accepted as closed. We do already send a lot of materials still to Salmo. We send all the wood from the central subregion, we send all the metal from the central subregion there, and composting is just another material that will be utilized. The composting facility has no connection to the landfill in any way. And compost is hauled separately from garbage anyway. So the distance from Nelson, the distance to Otoshinya and Salmo is very similar. So that difference, I don't think is a huge one. So The other one, and I don't know, Uli, if you have anything to add about Selmo there.
Lots. So, I mean, there was, as far as I heard, there was one question. The question was about the pamphlet and why we don't have the numbers in it. I'm convinced you looked at the resource recovery plan in a fair detail, and you have seen how big and how many numbers there are. You can't get that in a 4, 6, 8, or 10 pager. So there is no other option for us for the detailed information to refer our residents to our website. So that's to the question about why there's no numbers or close numbers, detailed numbers in that pamphlet. Amy has already explained the context of going to the central site. Yes, you and I, we have talked lots about that in the past, but it is a difference to go there with waste and waste disposal or with a treatment of a product that needs to be hauled that distance anyhow, as Amy pointed out, and treat that to a level that it becomes a fully usable product. The goal is to produce Class A compost, and it should be a product that has significant markets here around. An area that we are struggling for having sufficient topsoils, where we are trying to get local agricultural production established. I think this is the right way to go. In regards to volumes that you mentioned the food cycler, but all the food cycler does is dry the materials and grind the materials. The compostable organic matter has not changed, so needs to undergo the same treatment as the raw compost. The effective difference is the moisture content. So the originally planned volume that is to be managed at that facility, I believe we are talking about 8,000 tons overall. Yes, incoming is, from a tonnage perspective, slightly reduced by not more than 1,500 tons, but the organic matter stays the same as in the original design. So the fact that your community is using food cycler, the only impact that is going to have on the organics facility is that the hauling efficiency is increased, but that we have to rehydrate the material in order to compost it. Typically in excess or around a 40% moisture, where your product will end up somewhere between 5 and, depending on which numbers we go by, 5 and 25% moisture that you will end up with your material. In regards to education, sure. Could we do more? Absolutely. Question is, where do we want to go with education and what can we offer? So the programs need to be there, and many of the programs are relatively mature now. Resource recovery plan, the recycling rollout, we have done substantial education around that and will continue to do so. But again, so the only other question was who finances what? That will be, I'm convinced, an ongoing discussion that rural and municipal areas going to have. Personally, I am a supporter of a user pay system, which should be in the interest of the municipality. But again, the directors of the board will decide where that lands.
So Uli, I have a longer list, but I won't go into it in detail. We'll write to you. But the other one that you didn't address was, it's clear in the video. It was clear when we got the presentation. It's been clear in further conversations since April the 23rd of 2019, that there's no commitment from our regional partners, and I want to emphasize partners in Central Waste, to commit to organic diversion.
Can I respond? So part of this is that we have started, and if you looked at the survey information, gauging interest in the rural areas for that. And that is the first step towards what you express, rightfully so. How do we expand it out into the rural sectors? The plans were all along to continue further on from the municipal sector food waste collection into the rural areas. The discussion with the City of Nelson has in part accelerated that discussion, and we will follow up and see where that lands. Obviously, it is not very likely, if there's a significant resistance in the rural population, that we get a majority for behind establishment of a rural collection program. But again, we will gauge that, we will bring it back to the board of directors for decision making, and we will see if there's an opportunity. And I would say in the more built out areas around Nelson, like North Shore area I live, there is opportunities to get to curbside collection, both for recycling as much as for organics.
Okay, so I just got two more here. Councillor Lochtenberg and then Councillor Morrison.
And I think Councillor Page as well.
Yeah.
And Councillor Morrison was
Morrison,
first.
go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me? Anyhow, so I have a couple of questions to either Uli or Amy. Could you please update us on the timeline for organics in terms of the building of the facility at Salmo, and if we're seeing an impact in terms of the escalating building costs that seem to be all around us? And then a comment, and I'm sorry I'm asking these questions because I ask them all the time as the rep at the Joint Resource Recovery meetings. Again, about ICI, particularly in regards to organics, because they're a substantive, you only have to go and look behind any grocery store to see how much organic waste is being tossed out regularly. And I'm just wondering why we haven't taken a harder look or a harder stance on saying that they need to be coming on stream right away, not the word encouraging to participate. And I go back to things that were said by Moira Walker and Associates, who we've hired to do all this planning and to help us walk through actually the whole development of the organics diversion stream. And they're talking about how much more successful and how much more waste they've been able to divert when they banned ICI from being able to take their organics to just the landfill. So that was about 3 questions in once, but just like an update, because I feel like we're behind on the building. And then the comment about ICI, if you could kind of flesh that out a bit more. And I do have some other questions, but I'll just start with that one.
Amy, do you want to start?
Yeah, absolutely. The central composting facility, the pad has already been constructed, and the contractor is on site, and they're right now focusing on the HB tailings facility closure works. But I don't think we have any delays. We will be moving forward this year. The only one consideration is there's some new Environmental Management Act requirements that have required a little bit of design change and some other considerations. So we have a new building design we're working on with the contractor that's building the facility over in Creston. They had a design idea that we're replicating and modifying for the size of the central facility. And I think actually that one had a $40,000 or $50,000 cost saving. So in fact, I think rather than going over the costs, we've managed to keep the costs or go under a little bit. There's modifications to other line items in small amounts, but generally the facility, we have intentions to have it prepared this year. The transfer facilities likely won't be built until the spring. So that was your question about the composting facility. The ICI and banning question, the intent and feedback from the advisory committee and our joint committee and the board is the phased approach, or the initial prospect there will be a pricing differential to encourage diversion in organics and education, and then if the board or diversion numbers are not meeting what we want, the board can consider whether or not a ban is applicable at that point.
And in general terms, for any time you do a landfill ban, you first create the opportunity for diversion, then you try with intensive education to get buy-in, and then the third step, if required, is landfill bans. And landfill bans generally read nice, but in the practice, they don't work as well as it is often advertised. There is considerable effort required in order to document any kind of violations when you have landfill bans. And it can't be an organics one. It would have to be food waste or yard waste or similar ban, because there's a lot of waste that is of organic nature that comes to the facility that is not lending itself to a composting process. So yeah, very specific, but the ban is typically the third or fourth step in a progressive development of a program, with the first one being to create the ability to divert the materials that you're after.
You okay?
I have one more.
Okay, go ahead.
So one more question regarding your the pie graphs on the video that shows that central waste is going to be needing about $12.6 million. And when you look at what makes up that money and how we get it, whether it be between borrowing or taxation or fees, it's quite clear there compared to east or west that central waste has the most. We spend the most in taxation compared to the other two sub-regions, and while we're paying more in taxation, we're collecting less in tipping fees. And I'm wondering whether or not you're working specifically in regards to central waste, a plan to increase these tipping fees at potentially a faster rate so that we get this recovery going. If you could comment on that, that would be great.
Like I earlier mentioned, I am in principle a friend and supporter of user-pays systems. There is certainly a concern in rural areas, particularly in rural areas, that we see increased disposal in natural areas from increased tipping fees. Personally, I'm not so convinced that is the main driver for that, but ultimately it is decision making from all members of the sub-region and the board, depending on the decision. So like I said, we will continue to bring concepts forward that bring the tipping fee revenue in a better balance with the taxation, but again, it is a board decision.
Can I just follow up on that one?
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to follow up on that one too.
Okay. Is it normal? It just doesn't seem normal for me to have a plan that doesn't have the finance side of it figured out. Does it? is that normal in the province that a resource recovery?
Sorry,
You can't hear me?
could you elaborate? Yeah, could you elaborate what you mean
Well,
that the finances are not? Sorry,
yeah, normally if you have
could you?
if you have a plan of expenditure, and
Yes.
whether it's any of our utilities, we would never bring forward a plan without how it would be funded over the term of that plan. They seem to go hand in hand. It almost seems like, in this case, the funding and how it would be funding, whether it's tipping fees, taxation, etc., are being divorced from the expenditure side of it, and it just doesn't make sense to me that why you would do that. I get, whatever boards, etc., have the discretion in the future to choose, to modify that, but going into those discussions, normally I've seen a fully thought out, funded plan. Here's what taxation is going to increase over this plan period. Here's what tipping fees, if there's a transition, here's what that looks like, and having the people approving the plan actually approving a way to fund that plan, and at least future boards have the benefit of, here was the thinking of that group at this time of how they were going to fund this. And like I said, we all recognize that elected officials can change that going forward, but they could change the expenditure side of it as well. It just seems, it just doesn't seem logical to divorce those two pieces. And I think it's unfair to the public when those aren't presented to them as well. They should have as much say on the revenue side of it as they do on the expenditure side of it. Do they want to pay more user fees? Do they, where do they see taxation? All those things are a holistic review of the plan. And like I said, it just seems abnormal not to present the whole thing and make the board, make those at least preliminary decisions at this point to say, here's how we believe is the way forward to fund this expenditure that we see coming forward to meet these goals. That's a holistic approach to this, and separating those two just seems incomplete and unfair to the public to ask them to comment.
I'm not so certain why you say we are not presenting financial plans. So we have a financial plan for the 5-year period. And if you look at page 73, we have a 10-year plan in the resource recovery plan. So I'm not sure why you are referring to not showing financial information in regards to this plan. Number one. Number two is, yes, we are not saying in 2027 we will be at a tipping fee of $145 a ton. No, we do not. But we do show what money is coming from taxation and what is coming from tipping fee. And that is the best information we currently have. You, of all persons, know very well that it is a struggle to agree on the board level on longer term strategic decisions in regards to what is financed by tipping fees or taxation. So to the best of information we have shown what is financed through tipping fees and what is financed from taxation levels. And there will be certainly ongoing discussions about that. But whatever information we have brought before the public in as much detail as we can, in a 10-year horizon in the resource recovery plan and a 5-year horizon in our financial plan.
Okay, so
if I may add to it, we have significant uncertainties financially in this service. As you know, the HB or larger HB issue is overall somewhere in the neighborhood of a $7 million item. And we do not know at this point how much of that amount is going to be carried by the residents of this region and how much may be carried by the originator of these materials, tech in this tailings pond. So, like I said, there is definitely uncertainty in the plan, and there's nothing we can do about at this point to firm that uncertainty up.
Okay, so so we can provide what the 5-year forecast for tipping fees and taxation increase for central waste. Because I asked that earlier and I was told that that wasn't able to be done. Because I think that's what the mayor was referring to as far as the financial numbers in the pamphlet that's sent out. If that, I think that's what the public would like to know is what is the impact on taxation? What's the impact on tipping fees? What am I going to pay more to achieve these things? And I just heard that that was too complicated. It doesn't seem too complicated. We're not asking about the details, just the, what's the impact?
Like I said, there's
that's
a
in the
reference
5-year.
to our website.
Yeah, I
And
don't think
there's page
anybody's
73.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's, well, some people will go into that level of detail. I think they're looking for that at that high order of magnitude cost. What's the increase in my taxation? What's the increase in my tipping fees? I think that's what the public wants to see if they're going to make an informed decision saying, yeah, we're all in for this, or we're a bit concerned, what else could you do?
It's unlikely if this was, you were building an arena and you put this out to the public and asked them to vote on it, that they'd vote yes without some kind of a financial hit, either through using user fees or taxation. That's what you vote on. You vote on what is it going to cost me? What's the value? What's the future projections? I mean,
So,
when I go through when I go through the PowerPoint, which I did several times, there's so many, the word encourage is used, I think I counted 15 times. Encourage, so.
Could you
That
hear
doesn't
from
say much
Councillor
to me.
Lautenberg's question?
Councillor Luchtenberg.
Yeah, so I want to dig into that tipping fee, where we're trying to get to with tipping fees. First, just a quick clarification. If I'm understanding, the reason why our tipping fees are so low as a relative percentage of the cost recovery versus the West Subregion and the East Subregion is because of we're trying to recover like that the Salmo liability is figured into this breakdown. Just quick clarification on it. Is that correct? If that were removed, would it be closer to 50%? Tipping fees would tipping fees be closer to 50%?
There's a couple of factors. So if you, again, Resource Recovery Plan, page 27, the West Subregion has in excess of $2 million of tipping fee revenues simply because they host the landfill. That means any materials from the central subregion that go as direct haul, so for mostly commercial sector or larger projects that go to the western subregion are going there as tipping fee collected by the western subregion. So they have over $2.2 million currently already in tipping fee revenue, where your subregion is somewhere in the $1.4 million tipping fees. Number one difference. Number two is, as you correctly pointed out, with HB, a much larger financial load and burden that the service has to carry, and that is probably the largest factor currently in regards to the higher taxation versus tipping fee. The rate of tipping fee is in the central subregion already the highest in the region.
The rate in Central Subregion is the highest. Okay. So then to build on that, I think from my understanding, my read, the only, I don't want to say moral position on this, but maybe ultimately is the only ethical position, is that tipping fees covers 90% of the cost recovery here. And I think everybody more or less agrees on that. The argument, and the only argument that I've heard in opposition to increasing tipping fees, is the waste being dumped in the forests. And yet, if that's the case, if that's truly the case, and I don't mean to direct this at you, because I think this is entirely at the political level, why is there only $1,000 put aside to address that problem? It seems to me you would be putting an enormous amount to addressing that problem so that you can increase tipping fees to where they should be, which is 5 or 6 times higher.
He doesn't believe it's true. That's what he said. He said he doesn't believe it's true.
Right. So are we agreed? Is the issue that, well, yeah, sorry to Councillor Charlwood said that, I recognize you don't believe that's true. And yet we're still talking about $1,000. Is that the reason why it's only $1,000? Is because, we don't really believe it's going to have any effect anyway, so it's just sort of token? Or is there a political reason for it? Why is it only $1,000?
Or is there a plan to validate?
You're referring to the $10,000 education amount? Is that what you're referring to?
No, the slide, it's $1,000 annual operating for the other components, i.e. illegal dumping.
And 10% to 0.25% of a full-time equivalent.
Yeah, which I have a question about too, just the math on that.
Well, it's the
seems a
same
little-
thing. It's the same point.
So what I was told at or at the RPAC was it's a philosophical discussion. It should the regional district be involved in illegal dumping just because they collect waste? It really has nothing to do with collecting waste. It has to do with illegal dumping, whether you're putting a car there or a deer there or whatever. Is that not the role of the provincial government to enforce illegal dumping on their lands?
Oh, it's interesting.
That's the discussion. That's the discussion we've had That's the discussion that we've had at the table, is about who actually should bear the burden and how do you enforce the concept of illegal dumping. Like, I would have to agree with staff, is that I think there's bad actors, and I think bad actors are bad actors whether or not it's free to take your stuff to the transfer station, or if it's $100 to take a bag of groceries to the transfer station. You know what I mean? Like, it's bad actors are just bad actors. Hopefully the number of them wouldn't increase if, say, it was $10 a bag to take your bag to the transfer station versus the $3.50 that it is in Central Waste. But only time would tell, I guess. And I guess the other thing is that members around that are on Central Waste don't have a comfort level with running the risk of testing the water.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, it seems to me, if I may, that again, coming back to that $1,000 and then the number there on the FTE is, are we only paying $10,000 to $40,000 for full-time employees? So it was just, anyways, that just to flag the math on that. But it seems to me that with technology, we should be able to make the case that with a bigger budget, we could apply some sort of social effects here to identify who's dumping. Like, you just take some pictures, put it up on a website, and say, anybody recognize this stuff? There's going to be a disincentive to even run the risk of putting something out there if you know that your garbage is going to appear on the internet. So then if we can undermine the argument against raising tipping fees, if that's in fact the only argument against raising tipping fees, then shouldn't we do it? Couldn't staff make the case?
Can I add some contents to that?
Sure.
So I don't believe illegal dumping is the only reason that the board has concerns about raising tipping fees. The argument definitely includes illegal dumping concerns. It also frequently refers to affordability and the fact that with all the diversion that people are doing at home, sometimes those that bring in, and this is in regards to raising the per bag rate higher, is those that do a lot of diversion and composting, recycling, when they only bring one bag, then if it's higher, that's an impact. The other one is obviously wildlife concerns. So there's a sort of a package of reasons that commonly is on the table of discussion about tipping fees. The plan itself, the $1,000, all the costs in the plan that were identified in that zero waste section are costs over and above what we are already spending. So we already have some initiatives. We already do some lobbying. We already have staff in place to do some of these works. The $1,000 was specifically for the new app, which is a reporting app, which is used to do some of the things that you were just discussing. It is to post pictures, to identify locations on a map of where it's found, and to provide some education. So that's some feedback on that.
Great, thank you.
Just further, Amy, for Councillor Lockenberg, is that one of the other issues here is that we're $3.50, but is not West $3 the problem? So then there's the people that like it's like you can either drive to this transfer station here or I can drive to that transfer station there, and one of the issues here is that we don't have we don't have the same tipping fee in every one of the sub regions, which always lends the argument is why do we have sub regions, and maybe we should all be one great big region. I can see reasons why there might be an east sub region because I'm not too sure people pack their garbage in their pickup truck and drive it on the ferry, but like why isn't it more, because we have this difference between the for sure west and central. It's $3. Am I not correct? One of the staff. So people will go to the $3 place versus the $3.50 place.
Right. But is it, sorry, just a really quick question then. Is $6 or $7, given the percentages we're talking about, what would a price per bag be to achieve 90% recovery from tipping fees? Would it be $7 or $8 per bag?
So that's that whole discussion is a little bit of a deja vu of the discussion we have at the board level. We had substantial discussions about the tipping fee on a per bag level. The main revenue is generated from higher volume customers coming to the transfer station. So in effect, I strongly believe that the small customers with single bags are a money loser this sub-region. So that is one of the reasons that as staff, we tried to increase the minimum rate for even coming to the facility to keep single bag customers away, particularly from the Groma transfer station, where we have traffic problems, where it's a relatively expensive facility in regards to the capital investment and the staffing there. And it is reality that the large volume, the commercial larger volumes are the revenue generators that you typically have. And your ratio of single two-bag customers to the commercial amount at the Groma facility is not favorable. And that is one of the problems that we are facing. And that's why we have with relatively high tipping fee rates, still a relatively low revenue level. We, as the sub-region or the Groma facility, would be a lot more effective if, for example, the curbside collection in Nelson would be actually capturing 90% of the waste that is generated. But we see clearly in our numbers that we see every second week when you don't have a collection week, our volumes of single bag loads are peaking at the facility. That's just one of many items. We can't get in every detail here to explain what we are dealing with, but the single bag charge, unless we go to a significant base rate of saying, let's say $10 to get through the gate, we won't resolve that issue.
So why isn't that part of what the public gets to comment on then?
Because there is a decision made by the board what we are going forward with. You, I believe, in part have been in part part of the discussions, lengthy discussions that have been had at the board level. Councillor Morrison certainly has, and yeah, we have spent, I would say, hours on the discussion about how to structure bag charges at our facilities in the central subregion.
So
And just to add to that, the survey did ask questions about cost recovery and the user pay system and services that they would be willing to remove or reduce to reduce costs and things. So we did ask for input from the public on cost or cost saving measures. And then that information can guide some of the decisions the board make at the board table.
because I also recall we're one of the unique RDs, I guess, in the province that where user fees, where the system isn't cost recovery or primarily cost recovery. I think I heard that from the consultants.
But that
Sorry,
has lots to do with the topic of the HP facility. I think we are the only one probably in Canada that owns a mine tailings pond and has to remediate it.
Which was a decision of the board at the end of the day.
Okay, any further questions? I just want to leave you with a couple. And one I want to say, I'm sorry, I meant to say 5 times, not 15 times on encourage, and I find the word encourage pretty big. But I'm trying to decipher the slide that to optimize diversion, organic diversion, expand curbside collection. It's showing a map here, but I'm having trouble figuring out what you would do with the map. Can you help me understand it?
Looks like catchment.
Yeah, it's just where they would expand it to.
The yellow's who's going where, and
The map is to demonstrate the areas determined through the feasibility study that would have the most, were the most feasible areas to do the collection from. So along major transportation corridors or in distances close enough to collection, current or under construction collection or processing facilities or potential future ones. And so that's, the maps are just demonstrating the most likely areas for that capture.
And is it color coded accordingly then? Am I supposed to read these? Or just?
I guess I don't have it in front of me, so I'm not sure. You can see the yellow shaded areas along the transportation corridors.
Yeah, that's what you're suggesting. So where I'm trying to go with this here is that it clearly indicates that if the yellow shaded areas that that are indicated on the map should be part of the organics diversion, why aren't they?
Well, I guess I can explain that that's intended to be a user pay service, which we can't put in place without public approval. So the whole point of basically the last 4 pages of the mailer and at the second portion of the survey, it was we've done the feasibility study, and what that was directed through that decision was we will go to the rural areas and those people in those areas, gauge the level of interest. If that is successful, the intent is to put it in the plan that we intend to pursue it. We've applied for the grants, that OICP grant, and that funding we'll find out about in July. Once we have that information, we would go back to the service providers, likely do a request for expression of interest, get very specific costs and areas for serviceability, and then we'll actually do another round of consultation. It's in the regional district system, we can't put those services in place without public approval through referendum, AAP, or through the resource recovery plan, and we need to ensure that we do meaningful consultation about it. So that's, right now we have the feasibility study demonstrated the cost estimates based on costing from Preston's program and the RDKB and recent programs across BC. And so we've demonstrated what the cost is, but it still needs to go to market to get those final costs. And that's what we'll go back. If it's proved to be successful, we'll include it in the plan, and then we'll go for the second round of consultation. And then that's when it could become part of a service.
So you can correct me if I'm wrong here, and I have been wrong once or twice before. So what you're saying is that those areas have the option to go to referendum to get organics diversion, but the municipality doesn't.
We won't be doing a referendum. We'll be doing, this is our consultation, this is a two-stage consultation. So we're doing this, and then we're doing another one, depending on the first stage of consultation.
So how then do you bring those areas into the program? Because they have the option of turning it down, from what I gather.
Well, to clarify, if it's in the resource recovery plan, you don't have to do any more consultation. Correct?
I'm just trying to figure out, I just want to get some clarity on why it's okay for us to be part of this program, but all of our partners, and I want to emphasize partners, all of our other partners in Central Waste, or most of them, don't have to be. That's where I'm struggling with this. This doesn't make sense to me.
So there's, I mean, we are mixing here a couple of things up. The one is the structure of the regional district where services need to be approved by the public. That is not the case for municipalities in the same way. Number one. Number two is we are having that survey information, we gather feedback, and if we can, we write this into or we have written already a section into the resource recovery plan that would then, if we have positive feedback, allows us to establish a service. There's a process to it, and the resource recovery plan approval will likely be at least a year away before it is approved. So we are gathering that feedback, we are following the required steps for it. You as municipality have and had the chance to say, no, we will not be part of your organics plan. The regional district never said, you shall.
At this table.
Sorry, I didn't hear this.
So, Uli, just to clarify, unless what I heard from the consultant was incorrect, if it's in the resource recovery plan, then the board can bring those folks into organics collection. Is that not correct? You don't have to go back out. They don't have to vote on it. If it's in the plan, right. So it's up to the board at that stage, even if they had unfavorable response, if they still felt it should be part of the resource recovery plan and they approved the resource recovery plan overall with that part of it, they would be part of it. They may make a different choice.
The feedback from our surveys goes into the overall plan. And there is a chance that the ministry says you shall do more public consultation based on a overwhelmingly negative feedback to these services, right? So that will have to be seen, what our survey responses were, and ultimately what the outcome is out of that.
Okay, Councillor Page.
Thank you. Amy, Uli, thank you for presenting this plan. I know it's difficult at times because, of course, we've got that separation between what the board's decided, what we've decided, and where this plan is landed for the consultation side of things. I think listening to the table, looking at strategy 3, financial sustainability, you have a number of 4 points here around considering alternative administration models, undertaking system efficiency studies, reviewing subsidization of waste diversion. Can you give us a little bit more of an explanation on how this work will be approached? Do we need to have the board of the RDCK decide to tackle these things? Will those pieces, if this plan is adopted and it successfully navigates the public consultation phase you guys are in now, will this just be actions that will flow from this plan, or is there going to be additional hurdles at these kinds of conversations on how the governance model works for this particular service, which really, I think, is the issue above all of the issues we've talked about here tonight, and I think a lot of us have heard at this table before, is how do we envision an alternative model that will get at these inequalities that we keep having? Because unlike an ice rink, you know, the GHGs are pouring into the atmosphere now. We need to do diversion for these waste services. It's not optional, but of course we want to run the most efficient, effective, and value-added system we possibly can. I think nobody at the partner table disagrees that that's the goal. So how do we chip away at that? So my question is essentially, are we going to have to keep having this fight at the RDCK board to enact these 4 points, or will the plan, once adopted, start carrying that work?
Well, I can start, and Uli can add into anything that I might have missed. But the plan, a lot of the the cost recovery and systems efficiency, those are built into the implementation schedule starting in 2022, and that is something that we're very eager to move forward on. The alternate governance model, that's to some effect is already started, because we will be putting the allocation services in for the recycling and the composting. So I do feel like this is one of the main pillars of our plan. And you know, the system sufficiency review and the other study, they're not huge cost items, and I think that we recognize that they have a lot of value down the road for us. So I don't see those items having much objection at the board.
Answer your question.
Yep, thank you.
Can I just ask one more? Okay. Amy, in terms of like things that we were just talking about, you know, getting those diversion rates up, and you know, especially in the rural areas, you know, the outcomes of the plan are based on, you know, getting those levels of participation. If, for example, you had negative feedback on that and you can't achieve realistically some of the objectives in the plan, what happens at that stage? Do those diversion rates have to be updated for the resource recovery plan and resubmitted, or if the city objected and say, we don't think these are achievable unless there's, you know, curbside organics or recycling or whatever those components that are critical, or ICI, organics diversion, those key things that drive those diversion rates that are in the plan, how is that reflected in any approval at the ministry level?
Yeah, any items that are identified in the consultation as and would be recommended for adjustment would come with adjustment to the diversion numbers that would be associated with those. The provincial targets are that, and so that's what we're striving towards. And the province has put in some requirements for diversion, or some goals for having organics diversion in place, or various things in place. You know, they wanted the province to have 75% bans on organics, and they actually have met that already. So there's a few diversion items that or goals and targets that we've actually, the province has near or met. So I think we expect that they can increase those or change those in the future. And so, you know, they're not a regulatory requirement to meet, but they do push all activities towards doing that, whether it's through the solid waste management plan or the landfill criteria or various regulations that fall to like under the recycling regulation or OMAR, the organics materials recycling regulation. So there's a lot of drivers for getting those diversions, but they're not a legislated requirement. So we would adjust the plan according to the consultation is what I would understand.
Further questions? Hearing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
No, the one on the slide. Yeah. Just hold it for a few seconds until we hear it kick in.
Okay, next up is Nelson Together update. Katie Hunter and Marjorie Lesko, is that right? From Nelson at its best are presenting to council with regard to the ongoing development of the organization's poverty reduction plan, Together Nelson. There's Katie and there's Marjorie, right?
We can't hear you.
I'll just get my
There you go.
I'll just get my screen sharing for you guys 1 second here. Just want to clarify you can see the screen?
We can.
Yes.
Perfect. Then I'll hand it back to Margie.
Can we hear Margie?
Oh, Margie, we can't hear you.
Did you mute her? Just bear with us. We might have.
Margie, if you're talking through the phone, you might have to unmute your phone.
Well, we aren't out of the troubles of remote meetings yet.
No. Well, once again, we have the presentation, right?
Yes.
But we do need to hear from her.
Yeah, it was.
No, we can still hear from you.
I just connected to my computer audio. Can you hear me now?
You can. You'll have to mute one of those microphones.
Okay, I've muted my phone. Is that better now?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna hang up on my phone. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
You're great. There you are.
Yeah, that's good, Margie.
Katie's giving me a thumbs up, but I can't hear anybody else. Is anybody speaking at all right now?
So,
Yeah,
Or is it
can
just
hear
on
you.
me?
We can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear us?
Okay, well, I can't hear anything right now, but I'm going to proceed. So I hope this goes okay. And Katie, I'll just watch your face for cues because I can only see your face right now.
Okay, one second.
So,
Just before you start, can you
thank you, Mayor Dooley. It's so good to be here. I am Margie Lesko, Together Nelson's project manager. And today I'm co-presenting with Katie Hunter, who is a member of Together Nelson's Leadership Roundtable. And you might also know Katie as a community health facilitator from Interior Health's a Healthy Communities team. In addition to the land acknowledgement at the start of this meeting, I'd like to acknowledge the cumulative impacts colonialism has had on Indigenous community members who disproportionately experience poverty in our community. And at this time of heightened awareness of inequities faced by Indigenous people, I would just like to take a moment to urge us to keep this top of mind as we're listening to the presentation from Katie and myself today. We're here to provide you with an update on the poverty reduction action plans process thus far, including our recently completed community consultations and our next steps. As many of you know, this process has been supported by UBCM funding through city support to develop local poverty reduction plans in alignment with the provincial Together BC poverty reduction strategy. So thank you to the city for supporting our application so we can engage in this important work in our community. Katie, can you hear me? Because I just got a note that I have to rejoin. You can hear me? Okay. Okay, great. To set a context, over 2,100 community members in Nelson live below the poverty line. These are people that come from a variety of walks of life and are living in many different situations. But there is a desire for collective action moving forward. As a participant told us, I always dreamed that there could be an association in Nelson of people like me that want to help people in our community that are poor. I try to help people because that's how I was raised by Native elders, that you care for the people that are in need so that you can have a strong community. Katie will now share a bit about who we are and what poverty looks like in Nelson, and then I'll share a bit about what we heard during our recent community consultations on reducing poverty in Nelson. So Katie, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so hopefully Margie is able to join the audio while I'm presenting here. So Together Nelson is a community-wide initiative that's guided by a leadership roundtable. So we have 13 sectors represented on the roundtable, people with lived and living experience, communications, local government. We had the planning department at the city involved, economic development with Community Futures and the Nelson Area Economic Development Partnership. We have education with the school district, employment services with Kootenai Career Development Services. We have family and children services. Kootenai Kids is involved. For housing, we have Nelson Cares represented. Our Indigenous community, we have Coins on the Leadership Roundtable. From health, obviously, there's myself from the Healthy Communities team with Interior Health, and from mental health, we have a local psychologist. Kootenai Co-op is representing local businesses, and then we have a variety of nonprofits and social organizations. We have the Salvation Army, the Nelson Community Food Center, and Nelson at its Best and Poverty Initiative as part of the roundtable. So our purpose really is to work with the community to develop a 4-year action plan to reduce poverty in Nelson. I'm just getting a little bit of feedback. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Yeah, we're getting a bit of feedback.
Margie needs to mute.
Marjorie, you need to mute.
I don't know if she can hear us.
Note-taking.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it sounds like you can hear me, so I'll just keep going. The Leadership Roundtable, in addition to creating the plan, is working to establish a sustainable model using collective impact principles that will guide the implementation of the action plan. And UBCM will have Stream 2 funding available to communities to support that implementation. We're expecting that those funding applications will become available early next year. And again, we would just hope that the city could partner with us again on applying for that Stream 2, just like Stream 1 happened. We know that poverty is a community-wide challenge, and that really requires a collective approach to develop a community-driven plan so that everyone in our community benefits. We have framed our community consultations around 6 priorities that are the key determinants of poverty. So these are aligned with the priority areas of the provincial poverty reduction strategy, so Together BC. And as we dive deeper, we can look at what poverty looks like in Nelson. So at first, I just wanted to share a definition that we are using for poverty reduction. So it's up here on your screen, and you can see that we're really focusing on lifting people out of poverty and stopping them from falling into poverty to begin with, while still acknowledging that there's a lot of good work being done in our community around alleviation, and there still might be some high priority alleviation gaps we can work to fill while we are moving towards the more upstream work. So just orienting you quickly to our timeline, we have worked through the data collection phase, and I'll be highlighting a few key pieces of information in the next few slides, but you can find more information in the data brief that was included in your council package. It's a more fulsome picture of the data we collected. We have completed our community consultation, which Margie will speak to in more detail. And right now we're in the process of summarizing all that we heard through those community consultations. And you can expect to receive that in a more formal what we heard report later in July. And then after we get that what we heard report out, we're really going to be taking time to analyze and look into the feasibility of all the ideas and actions we heard from the community to create our action plan. And then our action plan will be launched in October, which you can also look forward to receiving an invite to attend that launch. So reiterating those numbers of the people living in poverty that Margie shared at the beginning of the presentation, based on the poverty line, which we're using as the low income measure here, we know that 19% of Nelson is living in poverty. And we also know that this is probably a very conservative number for what our true rates of poverty likely are, because we know that the low income measure doesn't fully reflect the cost of living in Nelson. And we also expect that COVID has increased this number over the past year. As you can see, this is based on 2019 data. So we also know that the number of people living in poverty is greater than who might visibly appear to be living in poverty. We have our community members that are homeless or provisionally accommodated represent 6% of the people living in poverty. So the breadth of poverty in our community is really much greater than what you might picture or what you might visually see. We also know that the rates of poverty among children is much higher than the general poverty rate, with 1 in 4 children in Nelson experiencing poverty. And many of these children are part of single parent households, with 75% of those households being female-led, which certainly emphasizes there's also a gendered lens on this issue. And lastly, we know that around 11% of people are working full-time, which really speaks to the discrepancy between income and cost of living. For example, when we compare the living wage, which you see on the right here, with the minimum wage in Nelson, we can see that the living wage, which does include consideration for the cost of living, results in around $13,000 more per year, even when considering the very recent increases to minimum wage that just occurred in the province. So I'll pass it over to Margie, and she can get a little deeper into the community consultation.
Thanks for that, Katie. So what we heard, what did we hear at the community consultations that we just completed? People with lived and living experience of poverty are at the fore of what we do, of our work. And so I'd like to start with what we heard with their voices. Here's two statements passed on by community consultation participants. Too many low-paying jobs in the community simply guarantees a certain level of poverty. We need to lift people out of poverty if we expect them to grow. People in poverty need support, not judgment. So, along with increases in income, we need to offer counseling, education training, and free daycare. So who participated? We consulted close to 70 community members through 6 4-hour online sessions. And there was one session for each of the 6 priority areas that Katie mentioned just a little bit earlier. We worked to engage our whole community. So quite often when we think about poverty reduction, we might lean towards thinking about social services, but we actually engage businesses to not-for-profit leaders in our community. We engage frontline workers along with local government and government offices. And we ensured that we heard from people with lived or living experience of poverty every step of the way. So poverty expertise. There was significant expertise on poverty, both lived and living. Lived experience refers to situational poverty. So situational poverty, for example, might be childhood experiences of poverty, experiencing poverty during post-secondary education as a senior due to mental health or health challenges or relationship changes. So we asked participants, why is reducing poverty in Nelson important? And we want to share a little bit of that with you. What we heard is there are too many low-paying jobs in our community. We heard that poverty leads to a multitude of challenges through the interdependent impacts of poverty. It impacts capacity and motivation to learn, especially in children and in youth. And we heard that reducing poverty, participants felt that it will ensure all of us can achieve our full potential and be fully contributing community and society members, and that everyone benefits, making our community, Nelson, healthier, more engaged, creative, and an economically vibrant community. So those two quotes that are on the presentation right now, those are also from consultation participants. We also heard from participants about barriers and gaps. 10 barriers and gaps arose across all 6 consultations, which focus around jobs, housing, childcare, mental health care, transportation, i.e. transit, food, technology and digital literacy, financial literacy, cultural safety, stigma, and discrimination, all of which had solutions that were identified that we can implement locally. So I'm sure you're wondering, so what are some of these solutions? And we actually had over 100 solutions that were identified. And with the engagement recently completed, we're now in the process of considering the effort, impact, and resource requirements of the community's top 40 ideas, with the aim of identifying the top 10 actionable ideas where we can make a difference and reduce poverty locally. The 4-year action plan will be launched in October, as Katie mentioned earlier. The launch will inform community leaders across our community, including local businesses, our local government, government offices, and not-for-profit community organizations of actionable solutions where we can work together collaboratively to reduce poverty in Nelson. So what role could the City of Nelson possibly play? Together Nelson is an exciting opportunity for our community and local government to better understand local poverty and to support implementation of poverty reducing activities in our community. While we know there are some poverty reduction strategies that only federal and provincial government policy changes can make happen, we also know there are many things we can do locally to make a substantial difference for people living in poverty in Nelson. If you'd like to learn more about solutions that we've identified, please join us at the action plan's launch in October. We'll send an invitation to the committee, to everybody here, in early September. Reducing poverty is a collaborative, community-wide effort. We hope the City of Nelson will be one of our partners in implementing the 4-year action plan, particularly as it supports the path to 2040 and our official community plan's goals. So after the launch, we look forward to connecting more directly with the committee of the whole to propose and discuss possibilities. This presentation was really an opportunity just to highlight what does poverty look like in our community, what has our initiative been doing around or learned through community consultations, and to invite you to participate in the upcoming launch. I guess now, I'm not sure if there's a question and answer period. So I'll turn that back over to, I guess, the host for today's meeting.
Okay, thank you. Questions from council, if any?
We muted, or, okay.
Council, go ahead,
Can
Councilor Woodward.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear, you can, yeah, they're giving you the thumbs up there, yeah.
Can you hear me now? It's been a while since we've been.
I can hear you.
Okay. It's been a while since we've been here, so we've all been talking on Zoom for a year. So, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I'm curious, so the city has a role to play, and NGOs have a role to play, in this trying to reduce poverty. I'm wondering how, because I've noticed that a lot of times that, NGOs are operating, sort of, doing their own things, trying to, reduce or help in their areas. But I feel like there's many NGOs in this town and that are kind of trying to do the similar things. Do you feel like they're speaking to each other enough, or the communication lines are open enough? And I guess the city has to be part of that too. But I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on the connection between the NGOs in town trying to solve these kinds of issues.
Margie, do you want to go or do you want me to go?
Yeah, you bet. I'm happy. I just I'm playing with my technology here. So if I sound a bit delayed, it's just because I'm trying to get my system to work. That's a great question. I think it's quite often easy to feel like we work in silos, and the whole point of Together Nelson is that we're working together. So right from our leadership table to our community engagement sessions, we're building a community-driven approach to reducing poverty. So as Katie had mentioned on our leadership roundtable, it's not just NGOs. We have businesses, we have people with lived experience, we have frontline workers, we have local government offices. So this project, its foundation piece is that we're working together as a collaborative community to strategically govern this or strategically lead this initiative, along with how we design the community consultation, and that will follow through with the community action plan to reduce poverty. And so we're hoping that together we can minimize that siloing and work together across these different areas. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, this is supplemental. So you consider your group as basically the thread that's going to tie together all of the NGOs. Would you say Together Nelson, and yeah, is that kind of how you envision your group as the glue?
Katie, I didn't quite catch that first part of your question, unfortunately. So I heard the last part.
I can try, Margie. Thank you. Yeah, so Jesse, I think that is right, that the action plan itself will help be like the glue or the framework. So we're looking to put forward as part of the action plan a governance structure, for lack of better words, for how this work will be implemented, and that the plan itself could be the common framework that could help people see the similarities in their work. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that's great. It gives me a good vision of what you are all trying to accomplish. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Woodward. Anybody else? Kevin, yeah, go ahead.
I just want to clarify if there are actions that you're proposing the city might do, you will share those before you put them in a plan and unveil them to the others, I hope. And I hope that would be for any organization that you're hoping would move forward with one plan, because you know, we'd have to look at it realistically. We would, you know, it'd be a bit presumptuous to suggest that we can do something without sharing it with us and giving us a chance to say whether that's feasible, not feasible, doable, where it kind of fits. Is that the
where it kind of fits? Is that the
Yeah, yes, absolutely. In terms of the plan, we would definitely like to connect with the city and let you know what parts of the action plan would directly relate to the city, so that you would have an idea of, as I mentioned earlier, anything that might support the OCP or the path to 2040, and be familiar with what actions we're proposing. So I guess we'd need to arrange to get that to you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. That was one of my questions, because we'd have to run it.
Yeah, thank you. That was one of my questions, because we have to run it.
Want to endorse.
Want to endorse. What the White House. No.
Are you okay now? Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, thanks.
I think we
Yeah,
we would definitely make sure that any direct action is run through, especially since we have representative from the planning department on our leadership roundtable. So that could be one of our conduits to get information back to you all as well. And then we also had additional city staff participating in the community consultations, and I believe some email feedback from counselors. So, but yes, before anything's public, it will go back to you.
Councillor Page.
Councillor Page.
You probably need a mute.
You probably need a mute.
On Margie, thanks. Okay, you guys, Katie, Margie, I really appreciate all the team and everything that's gone into putting this engagement session together to do the problem solving around this. My question, as you guys have gone through this process, we've got the baseline number that's been determined of 2,100, and that we know it's probably a conservative estimate. In the generation of this project, did we get a sense how that number has changed? Do we have any historical precedents to appreciate in context if things are getting worse, if they're getting better? I know the action plan will, of course, hope to further that number even lower than it is now, but I want to get a sense of over the last decade leading up into this engagement process. Is the community been getting worse? Has it been slipping in terms of poverty and the number of people?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Page. Historically, you're starting over the last decade. Historically, in the last 10 years, poverty in Nelson has been going down, and that is directly related to federal initiatives, such as the child benefit. And historically, also, rural poverty is higher than provincial and federal poverty rates. So Nelson's poverty rate has historically been higher than that, but has gone down in the past 10 years. And that number that you saw was lower. And as Katie had mentioned, that data was based on, I think, from 2019, and it doesn't include COVID, the impacts of COVID. And so COVID has impacted everybody, not just Nelson, but historically it has gone down. Now it's gone up over the past year or two is what we expect. And it is in relation to the provincial and federal poverty rates much higher. It's also, I don't know if you recall that slide that Katie had mentioned, but regionally our poverty rates are quite high. Trail, Castlegar, Fruitvale, and Rossland have a 10 and 14% poverty rates during the same time period. And however, Salmo and Slocan Valley have significantly higher. So Nelson generally, regionally, is placing higher. And over the past decade, it has been going down a little bit due to federal changes.
So, just one supplemental along that vein of thought there. When we talk about homeless populations, we also talk about how we track people moving in and out of the jurisdictional systems. In these discussions that the leadership roundtables have been having and the framework of this engagement, do we track the difference between people that are, well, I guess I'll say, manifesting poverty within the system that we have here in the region and in the city, or are we tracking if people are being pushed out of the city and that's having a depressive effect on our poverty numbers? I can elaborate if that didn't make sense, but are we pushing
Councillor
people out, or
Page,
are we
that
making,
yeah, that made a lot of sense, and that came up quite a lot in the discussion when we around the community roundtables around housing and speaking to transportation. Is there's especially coming from the frontline worker point of view, a lot of essential frontline workers have now been forced to live outside of the city, and it's cheaper for them to own a car, pay for the carrying cost of a car, drive in every day than it is to live within the city. So we are seeing that people are moving out, and you're right that that might have an impact on the rates we're seeing, the depressive rates. I like that because it has two meanings when you said it.
Thank you. Councillor Charlwood.
Thanks for your presentation. My question has to do with living wage. I know there are some organizations, not-for-profits locally, who are making a point of offering a living wage in advance of, say, a federal move to legislate guaranteed livable income. Wondering if you've got a sense at the table or the tables if there's an appetite to whether it's ask for it, encourage. I know we don't like that word so much, but is there an appetite for local organizations, and you had a lot of businesses at the table, to look at that for themselves and find new business models, recognizing the gap between what's being paid and what a living wage is?
Katie, are you okay if I answer that, or would you? Okay. So with respect to living wage, I think there certainly was an appetite to find ways to encourage businesses to be able to pay a living wage. I think there's different kinds of businesses in our community. There's some large businesses, and then there's smaller businesses that maybe are struggling and are unable to pay living wages. So looking at alternatives to paying living wages with other types of benefits. I know that from previous and poverty work through Nelson at its best, not necessarily this Together Nelson or this engagement piece. And so the discussion really focused around solutions, and certainly one of the solutions was looking how can we encourage adoption of living wage in businesses in our community, and looking at creative ways of how we can support that.
There's also,
which we'll need to.
There's also opportunities for municipalities to become living wage employers, and actually just today, the organization that does the living wage calculation across BC ran a webinar that shared some points of view from different municipalities, mostly on the Lower Mainland and Victoria, that have become living wage employers, and then also spoke a little bit to the business perspective. So I'd be happy to send that recording out, Councillor Charwood, if you would like to see that.
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you. I don't think we have a problem with that, but I think we got the living wage covered here, but
not for everyone.
Yes, yes.
In the municipality?
Well, that,
Temporary workers.
that covers also sometimes
youth.
All our temporary workers. Yeah. That's who we employ, right?
Yeah.
So we wouldn't buy food from the Hume if they didn't pay living wages, which is a...
But places like New Westminster, that were one of the first places that brought this in, put in a process of making sure that if they were, the contractors they were hiring were paying the living wage. So didn't make a lot of impact, but it made, I guess, a little bit of impact when they went through some of their supply chain when they went there.
And as a role model.
A few years
that's-
ago,
that's a good move.
QP had a campaign, Barry O'Neill led that campaign for the living wage program. It was actually quite a good program that they put together, and he sort of toured the province and presented on it. It's probably still available on the QP site, so to look at. It was interesting when I went through the report. It was interesting to notice the communities that actually had lower. I'm not suggesting it's the lowest by any means, but happen to be connected to the industrial sector as an example, where there are high-paying jobs like Trail, Roslyn, Castlegar as an example, and the Slocan Valley was up at 40%, where there's little or no. Just not there's not those high-level paying jobs in up through that corridor. So it's just interesting.
Yeah, that's definitely something we heard in the consultations was the limited opportunity for the higher paying jobs.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing too, and I know it is touched on in different ways in the report, but it seems to me there probably could be a little more emphasis on education, because that's the key that unlocks a lot of doors for people and elevates them to that next level of employment and out of that sort of minimum wage sort of area. And I know it is touched on a little bit here. It talks about access to mental health, affordable housing, education, and training. It's something that I believe is a real solution to a lot of challenges, is helping people retain that next level of education, whether it's through the network of colleges that Selkirk offers here. I don't know if they were a partner in your conversation or not, but I think they have a number of courses that help people upgrade and are able to move on to better paying jobs. I don't know if you can answer that or not, or if it's just a bit of a ramble. It might be my part, but.
I'm happy to answer that, Mayor Dooley. That's a really good point, and that's why education and training was one of our 6 priority areas that we held a community engagement around. And so when in the solutions, certainly there were solutions that focused on education and training. And I just haven't, they didn't, in the barriers and gaps, you can see some of them that were identified that revolve around education and training or focus on that. And certainly in the solutions, there are some more ideas there. We just didn't highlight them in this report. So that's certainly part of this process, and it's one of the 6 pillars, if you will, of effectively reducing poverty and aligning with BC's Together BC strategy to reduce poverty. So we're certainly looking at that.
And just to follow up to that, did you engage with the college?
Did you engage with the college?
Sorry, you cut out.
Did you have engagement with the college? Were you part of the group?
Yes, we did. We had 1 or 2 representatives from the college. And we also have one of the members on our leadership roundtable is also affiliated with Selkirk College.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Councillor Charwood.
While we're on the topic of education, I noted there's a lot of feedback. Okay.
No, it's there.
I'll just try with going over it. I noted the continuing decrease in graduation rates. Do we have a sense of why that is? From high school, sorry.
So there has been a slight decrease. I'm kind of going back in the data here. So there has been a slight decrease with the wave. Are you talking about the wave 7, Councillor Charwood, of data that's just come out recently?
It was just in your report. It noted that there was a gradual decrease, and it's been decreasing for a while. It was just your report that I was reading.
Yeah. You know what? That is based on early development indicators. And if I recall correctly, there's, Katie, you're going to have to remind me, I think there's 5 or is it 7 indicators? And of those indicators, what there was a trend was emotional maturity was decreasing on the indicators, which was that and that was impacting, does that impact graduation though? I don't know how that's relating. You know what? I'm not sure. I'm going to have to take a look into that, Counselor, and get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're no further questions.
Okay,
With
so we're no further questions. With that,
thank you. I'm not getting feedback now, so thank you very much for your presentation. We appreciate your work, and thanks. Good questions from Council. All right, take care, and we look forward to hearing from you when you're developing your next step to bring before Council to have us endorse it or not.
Thank you, Mayor Dooley.
Right,
Thanks,
take care.
Council.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, next ANKORS. And I know these folks have been sitting on there for a while.
My goodness. Poor things.
2 hours. Now you know how we feel. Who's on here?
Hi, I'm Alec Shirstavidov.
Alec, how are you doing?
And
Welcome. Yeah, I know you've been here since about, what, 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or something?
yeah, I'm pretty tired. It's been a long day, I'll tell you.
Well, thanks for hanging in there. Thanks very much for hanging in, Alec. We really appreciate that. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have
Well,
a
thank you for
colleague with
having
you.
us.
Amber, is it?
I have 2 colleagues.
Oh, 2, okay.
Yes, I have two colleagues with me, and as I said, my name is Alex Shirstavidov, and I work with ANKORS, and I have 2 colleagues with me, Amber Strukins and Tammy McLean. And we're here to talk a little bit about the opioid crisis and how we can all work together to stop the health crisis and the deaths and so on. So we're here in partnership with Mom Stop the Harm. So Tammy McLean will be representing Mom Stop the Harm. And she also provides opioid agonist treatment and has a clinic in Trail. And Amber Strukins works at ANKORS, providing education information to the people that we serve through Street College. So I'm going to quickly go through this. Just an introduction to the Rural Empowered Drug Users Network, which is we've got 3 groups, one in Nelson, one in Trail, and one in Grand Forks. The Grand Forks group is called HOPE, Helping Our People Evolve. Anyways, so the Rural Empowered Drug Users Network is a peer-led support, education, advocacy group for people with lived and living experience of illicit substance use. Our mission is to help create an environment that supports the dignity, respect, health, and safety and human rights of current and former drug users. We strive to improve the quality of life for people who use drugs. We work together and with community to respond to the overdose crisis and reduce harms associated with illicit drug use. With support from ANKORS over the past 17 years, Redone meets through the Kootenay Boundary region and with active groups holding regularly scheduled meetings and other opportunities in Trail, Nelson, and Grand Forks. Our regular meetings are open to all current and former drug users, and we also have allies that are able to attend. Redone now receives funding and mentorship support from the BC Yukon Association of Drug War Survivors on behalf of the OERC. The OERC is the Opioid Emergency Response Center. To respond to the overdose crisis, we host a range of educational opportunities, collaborate with local and regional service providers, and work to ensure that the voices of rural people with lived and living experience are represented at all levels of dialogue and in research. Redone provides essential engagement opportunities for people with lived and living experience who often suffer.
Alex, could I stop you for a second, please, if you don't mind?
Sure. Yep.
I'm not sure if you're trying to put slides up on the screen or not, but we're still on the same one. Okay, now they're moving.
Okay, so Amber, she's the person doing the slides.
Amber's sitting out on the deck enjoying herself there, I can see. So, Amber, you got to make sure you push that button.
Okay, so where was I here? Redone provides essential engagement opportunities for people with lived and living experience who often suffer social exclusion, marginalization, discrimination, violence, and isolation. Our groups support the needs of members however possible, ranging from immediate survival needs to high-level policy advocacy needs. One of the ways that we address stigma and provide support to our communities and members is through Redone Outreach, which Amber can tell us more about. And so I'll just pass it on to Amber here. Thank you.
Can't hear you.
Thank you so much. You can hear me now?
Yes, but I'm not sure.
I'm realizing.
I'm not sure, Amber, that you have the slide that you want to speak to up. Maybe you do. I don't know.
I will move forward. Apologies, we're all a little bit warm and tired here. I had intended to hear from Tammy earlier, so you will watch me fumble backwards through slides in just a few minutes. But first I'll tell you a little bit about Redone Outreach. To begin, Redone Outreach is a small group within Redone. It's an initiative that has been started in recent years by Redone. And this group is comprised of trained people with lived and living experience. And we have folks trained in naloxone administration, safer syringe handling and disposal, and a little bit of peer support outreach. So what Redone Outreach does is 2 hours a week, a small crew of trained volunteers does cleanup work around Nelson, collecting harm reduction supplies, needles, syringes, pipes, around hotspots, both those known to us and those reported to us. We try as much as possible to respond to community requests for in-the-moment cleanup, but again, it's a very, very small contract, so sometimes we have to refer those back to ANKORS or someone else. We historically have worked with the Nelson Police Department a handful of times to do some bigger cleanup at homeless encampments around Nelson. And why do we do this? We do this because people who use drugs are experts in reducing the harms associated with substance use, primarily. Secondarily, we do this because we love our community and want to contribute. And additionally, we see this sort of engagement as an important way to reduce stigma against people who use drugs, and so take this work on with great priority. The benefits as we see it are tangible to everyone, you know, community at large, individual community members, cities, businesses. We all benefit from having clean public spaces. We all want to live in a nice, safe, healthy environment. Some of the other kind of more subtle benefits of this work have to do with relationship building and cohesion. When our crews are out doing this work, we're interacting with businesses, we're interacting with community members, we're providing a bit of education on the fly sometimes, and you know, we're just developing community rapport with people that we might otherwise not have contact with. And then there's benefits to the folks involved in this project. People who use drugs are really benefiting from the routine and the inclusion and that feeling of participatory contribution. I hear from our volunteers all the time that it's really great for them to have something regularly scheduled to do, and that they're really enjoying, you know, contributing in a really tangible, visible way to bettering our community. I bring before you a couple examples of other projects in other communities today. There is a similar project in Quesnel known as the Quesnel Clean Team. This was funded by CAI in recent years through the Open Granting Stream and the Downtown Victoria Business Association's Clean Team. So both of these groups do needle cleanup. The DVBA also does graffiti work, which I do not believe Quesnel does. And having spoken to folks organizing those groups, the things I'm consistently hearing about benefits to Victoria and Quesnel communities have to do with relationships as well. Jenny McDougall, who coordinates the Quesnel Clean Team, tells me that to her, it's all about showing community and business owners that we too care about our community and that we can and want to contribute to our community, that we're valuable assets. And the DVBA has informed me that their biggest feedback around this project is that seeing the clean team out gives people who come to Victoria the impression that the community is a safe and welcoming place. So these examples show me that there's really small projects that can have really positive and impactful impacts on our communities. Yeah, and overall, I think our messaging here is if we want to adequately address the overdose crisis, community safety and inclusion, first we just need to come together. I'm going to skip backwards in slides now. Excuse me for a moment, and then we'll hear from Tammy. Thank you. There we go. I wonder if Tammy is having an audio dilemma. I have Tammy calling on my cell phone, so maybe we can finagle this. Hang on. Tammy, I have you on speaker.
Okay, awesome. Are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm sorry about the. I'm just going to try and mute my speaker here. I don't know if that makes a difference.
We can hear you pretty good, actually.
Is it okay to proceed like this? It's pretty challenging with the echo.
Works for us.
It's working here, Tammy.
Okay.
Not sure what it sounds like.
Okay. So my name's Tammy McLean. I'm a family nurse practitioner at Interior Health at Trail Mental Health. And I've been working in addictions medicine for the last 2 years. And what that means is I support people to engage in opioid replacement therapy. So that includes methadone, Suboxone, long-acting morphine, access to a safe drug supply, supporting people to go to treatment, detox, those kinds of things. I'm here, though, as a member of Mom Stop the Harms, and we're a network of Canadian families who are impacted by substance use. And as you can see, we're an advocacy group that really work to decrease stigma, harms, and deaths related to substance use. Over 1,700 members, and we get new members every day. And the way to join this group is to have had a family member who has died of an overdose, or to have family members who are still living and have lived experience with substance use. So I just wanted to mention today, I've changed some of the names, but this was on my feed from Mom Stop the Harm. So hello to Alice and Jane, not their real names. We hope you find some support and understanding here with us. You are not alone. Also on the newsfeed today was happy birthday to my boy, forever 21. Happy birthday to my son, forever 21. Happy birthday to my son, forever 30. So, and then a year ago today, I said goodbye to my daughter. My heart is forever broken. So those are the things that I read every single day. So just to talk about British Columbia, in BC in May, we had 170 suspected illicit toxicity drug deaths. That's the equivalent of 5.2 drug deaths per day. 70% of those people dying were male. 85% of those deaths occur in private residences. And this is related to stigma, and also COVID has had an impact on this. Interestingly, there's been no overdose deaths at supervised consumption sites or overdose prevention sites. So in BC, just this is a litany of numbers here that are horrifying to actually think about. January, 185 deaths in British Columbia. February 164, March 166, April 176, May 160, for a total of 851 deaths since January of this year. And we're expected to exceed overdose deaths from last year, which were 1,720. So I believe if the trajectory continues, we will surpass that number. In terms of the drugs involved, fentanyl, of course, has been implicated in 85% of those deaths. 14% had extreme fentanyl strength in it. Carfentanil was found in 75%, not 75%, I'm sorry, 75 of those deaths. And so we're finding fentanyl in the dark supply, in cocaine, in methamphetamines, and in other opioids. We're also interestingly finding benzodiazepines, which are not approved for use in Canada, in approximately 60% of the drugs that have been tested. So when we drill it down to our Kootenay boundary area, we've had 10 deaths since the start of the year. 4 in Nelson, 2 in Castlegar, 1 in Grand Forks, 2 in Trail. I'm not sure where the 10th death has occurred. It hasn't been assigned to a community yet. So what we're doing is we have 3 asks. And the first one is just to acknowledge that the opioid crisis is the largest public health emergency in our lifetime, with over 16,360 deaths since 2016. That's a death every 2 hours. The Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police agree that the evidence suggests decriminalization for simple possession as an effective way to reduce public health and public safety harms and associated with substance use. Just having the chiefs of police put forward that statement has caused our government to indicate that it is now deliberating over decriminalization. So we're requesting that the Nelson Council petition the Canadian government to declare the overdose crisis a public health emergency, so that it is taken seriously and funded appropriately to reduce harms and deaths for all Canadians. And lastly, the overdose crisis shows no sign of abating, and so we're asking the Nelson City Council to join Salmo, Trail, and Rossland, and many other communities in petitioning the Canadian government to declare this a serious public health emergency and put just as many resources into solving this as they have done for COVID.
Thank you, Tammy. Questions, Council?
Is your presentation done?
It says thank you.
Thanks, Tammy, Amber. Thanks very much. And Alex, any further questions, Council? Actually, when you listen to the numbers and you look at the impact of COVID, there's no question it's in the same league of a crisis, loss of life. It's terrible. Okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say that from what I've heard talking to police officers about the toxicity in our town, about the toxicity of drugs that have increased over the last 5 to 10 years, it's just phenomenal. And they say, out there, it's not like you're finding people who are doing your kind of classic heroin or cocaine kind of drug. It's all manufactured chemical cocktails that are really toxic. So can I just ask that you're trying to say decriminalization of drugs is needed? Is that like having a safe supply of non-toxic drugs available to people whenever they need it? Is that kind of what you're
Amber, go ahead.
Thank you for your question. And I think you raise a number of really important points there, but I think that when we talk about decriminalization and safe supply, we need to think of these things as related but separate. A safe pharmaceutical supply of drugs that people actually use will, we believe, have a serious impact on reducing overdose deaths. Decriminalization, I believe, is an essential first step to getting through this muck, but it won't immediately have the same impact on reducing overdose fatalities. Though is still quite important because it prevents a lot of really important progressive change from going forward. And I think maybe just more at a foundational principle level, people who are at risk of overdose, not all, but many, are diagnostically considered to have a medical condition, right? We have criminalized the substance of a medical condition through the criminalization of possession, which prevents people from getting help. Tammy, I'm sure you have much more on this as well.
What I would like to say was, we have examples of decriminalization of substances, prohibition being the number one that we know in our lifetime, or well, maybe not my lifetime, but people making moonshine and bathtub gin that was killing people because they didn't have any idea of the strength of the substance they were about to ingest. We have safe consumption sites for alcohol now. They're called bars, and we also have regulated drug supply for alcohol, which are called liquor stores and cold beer and wine stores. Had we not done those changes, I suspect that the death rate from alcohol would be astronomical. And so we need to look at how do we support people who use substances to not die, number one. And what we've been doing so far is not moving the needle very much on that. And so people that look at and research these things are saying the two things that we can do is have our federal government declare this a public health emergency with the appropriate funding to support people wherever they enter the healthcare system so that we can prevent them from dying. Safe supply is, I would say, probably the number one thing that I can see that is going to save lives right now. And decriminalization, what it does is allows the RCMP and police to not be focusing on the end user, but then to go after organized crime and the people that are bringing these things into our country that are killing our children, our friends, and our neighbors.
Thanks, Tammy. Any further questions? Thank you, each one of you, very much for your presentation tonight. And Council will take into consideration your recommendation, and we'll have a conversation with the police chief, actually, because he'd be one of the people that was involved in that conversation around decriminalization. So, sorry, somebody trying to speak?
Oh, yeah, sorry, thank you. Mayor Dooley, one of the things I've done is sent some, with the package that Amber sent into the city with some language on the resolution that we're proposing Nelson to consider.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, that's fair.
And if it is supportive to that, sorry.
I was thinking in terms of the amount of money that was put towards COVID, and rightly so. Maybe this is an opportunity to look at a program that wouldn't amount to the same amount of money, but definitely could have an impact. And it's one thing to pass resolution; it's a whole other thing for federal governments or provincial governments to support those resolutions with some serious action. And generally, that involves financial support.
My apologies. If I could just add one more thing. This is from Dr. Lisa Lapointe, who is the Chief Coroner for British Columbia. This was in today's news. There's no way to measure the catastrophic impact that the loss of these lives have had on every community in our province. Today, I grieve for all of those who have lost someone close to them as a result of the crisis. As the COVID-19 pandemic winds down, we must turn our attention to combating BC's other public health emergency with the same sense of urgency. We need to ensure the safe alternative of toxic drugs are available throughout the province, and that we're taking meaningful steps to reduce stigma and offer substance users access to the supports they need and are seeking. And that was from In Today.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Tammy. Okay, folks, we're going to wrap up there, and thank you for sticking around. I really appreciate it. It's been a long evening for everybody, so take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
Bye now.
You're welcome. We have Scott somewhere kicking around, so
We gotta wrap up this.
my computer stopped, so I'll just get back to the.
Everybody, did you have a chance to read the important stuff? Are we still?
We're still in.
Hang on, we're still online. So let's adjourn this meeting. Scott's here now. So thanks everybody for the presentation tonight. And with that, I'd like to ask for a resolution to adjourn. Councillor Page and Councillor Renwick, all in favour? Carried. Thank you. And we're going to give Sarah a moment or two to get us offline here, right? So if you want to take a bathroom break, now is your chance.